In an age of gentle herbal remedies, when sickness was seen as a simple imbalance in the body, one man made a terrifying declaration. He said that the only real difference between a life-saving medicine and a fatal poison was the dose. This man, who called himself Paracelsus, is now known as the father of toxicology. He built his entire career on a horrifyingly simple idea: that the cure for a disease could be found within the very thing that seemed to cause it. He called it the law of like cures like. This idea sounds like madness for a doctor in the 16th century. It was a complete rejection of 1,500 years of established, safe medical tradition. Why would anyone champion the use of literal poisons like mercury, arsenic, and antimony? What could possibly drive a man to believe that true healing could only be found through materials so dangerous they could kill a patient in a single, agonizing instant? The official story paints him as an arrogant, delusional quack. That version of the story, however, leaves out the most important part. He was driven by a secret philosophy, a new and dangerous way of seeing the entire universe, and it set him on a collision course with the history of science itself. By the end of this journey, we will reveal exactly what that philosophy was, and why it made him the most dangerous doctor in history. But to grasp why a mind like his would declare war on medicine itself, we have to journey back into the world that created him, a world of suffocating stillness, where science had been asleep for 1,000 years. The medical world Paracelsus was born into was a place of quiet, dusty libraries, a world away from modern laboratories. For nearly 1.5 millennia, the practice of medicine had been completely dominated by the ideas of a single man, the ancient Roman physician, Galen. According to Galen, the human body was a simple machine governed by 4 vital fluids, known as humors. There was blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Health was a state of perfect, harmonious balance between these 4 liquids. Sickness, therefore, was understood purely as an internal problem, a simple imbalance within, rather than an attack from the outside. Instead of waging war on a disease, a doctor's role was to be a gentle gardener, carefully coaxing the body back into its natural equilibrium. Treatments were mild. They consisted of herbal concoctions, carefully prescribed diets, and of course the infamous practice of bloodletting. The goal was always to remove the excess humor and restore harmony. It was a system built entirely on philosophical tidiness, prioritizing it over aggressive intervention. And crucially, the path to knowledge was not through discovery. It was through inheritance. The answers weren't sought by studying the sick. They were found by studying the ancient texts of Galen and Avicenna. Can you even imagine a world where for 1,500 years, medicine barely changed? Into this world of ancient certainties, a walking contradiction was born. His name was Philippus Aureolus Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim, born in the mountains of Switzerland in 1493. His father was both a physician and a chemist, a man who taught his son not just about the 4 humors, but about the secrets hidden in the earth: metallurgy, mineralogy, and the strange, mystical art of alchemy. The young man was brilliant, but he was also impossibly arrogant and possessed a deep contempt for authority. He briefly attended universities, only to find them filled with what he called high colleges producing many high asses. He openly declared his belief that you couldn't find true knowledge in the yellowed pages of a book. You had to find it through direct, raw experience with the world. He famously boasted that he had learned more from tramps, executioners, and barbers than from the most respected professors of his day. And so, in an act of supreme self-confidence, he shed his long, cumbersome name. He adopted a new one, Paracelsus. The name meant equal to or greater than Celsus, a legendary Roman physician. It was a direct challenge to the entire medical establishment. He then began a life of endless wandering. He traveled across Europe, into Egypt and Arabia, serving as a military surgeon on the battlefield and learning the folk remedies and hidden cures of every culture he encountered. He was searching for a new kind of knowledge, one that was alive and dynamic, unlike the dead words on a page. His search led him deep into the mines of the Tyrolean Alps, and it was there, in the dark, choking tunnels, that he had his inciting revelation. He watched the miners, men who spent their lives breathing in the acrid, metallic dust of the earth. He saw them develop unique and terrifying sicknesses, crippling coughs, wasting diseases, and mental decay. The common belief was that these illnesses were punishments from angry mountain spirits, or nones. He looked past the idea of a spiritual curse. Instead, he recognized a clear physical cause and a physical effect. He realized this sickness was completely unrelated to an imbalance of their humors. It was the direct result of external agents, the toxic vapors of arsenic and mercury invading their bodies. This was a revolutionary thought. Sickness was a localized attack, an enemy storming the gates. His entire view of the body shifted. It was no longer a garden to be balanced, but a fortress that needed to be defended. And to fight these chemical invaders, you needed powerful, targeted weapons. Gentle herbs wouldn't work. You needed to fight poison with poison. But this was not a philosophy of random violence. It was a strategy built on a secret understanding of the universe that his enemies would dismiss as madness, and it is crucial to pay close attention to the events that followed, because each one is a clue that will ultimately expose his true, hidden logic in our final scene. Armed with this new and dangerous philosophy, Paracelsus began to put his theories into practice. He waged war on disease with a ferocity the medical world had never seen. Europe at the time was being ravaged by syphilis, a new and terrifying illness that left its victims disfigured and insane. Traditional remedies were useless against it, but Paracelsus attacked it with a chemical weapon, carefully measured, microscopic doses of mercury. For patients suffering from unbearable pain, he created laudanum, a powerful tincture of opium that could silence agony itself instead of just prescribing chamomile tea. He pioneered chemical therapies using antimony, iron, sulfur, and zinc, prescribing them to chemically target and destroy the root of an illness, not to rebalance the body's humors. His methods were brutal and often dangerous, but they were also effective. His successes, particularly against syphilis, earned him a reputation as a miracle worker. And in 1527, that fame led to the unthinkable. He was offered the prestigious position of city physician and professor of medicine at the great University of Basel. It was the heart of the establishment. This was his chance to dismantle the old world from the inside. He accepted, and the academic world had no idea what it had just unleashed. From his very first lecture, he caused a firestorm. He refused to speak in Latin, the mandatory language of all academic discourse. Instead, he lectured in common German, so that anyone, a student, a shopkeeper, a barber, could understand him. He tore up the official curriculum and taught from his own experiences. He openly mocked his distinguished colleagues, calling them greedy, ignorant fools who were more interested in lining their pockets than in healing the sick. He was a bomb thrown into a silent, sacred library, and you can light the fuse by hitting that subscribe button. The explosion was about to come. The conflict reached its terrifying peak on the night of June 23rd, 1527. It was St. John's Eve, a night when the people of Basel traditionally lit bonfires to mark the solstice. Paracelsus saw an opportunity. In the main town square, surrounded by his students, he took a torch. But he didn't just light a pyre of wood. He walked to the roaring flames holding a very specific book, the Canon of Medicine by Avicenna, a sacred text, a pillar of medical knowledge that had been the undisputed authority in every university in Europe for over 500 years. And as the city watched, he threw it into the fire. The crowd gasped. This was more than a simple act of arrogance. It was a declaration of total war. He was symbolically burning 1,500 years of history, 1,500 years of unquestioned authority. He shouted to his students that if their hats were as learned as their professors, they would do well to burn their hats and buy new ones. He told them to stop reading the books of dead men, and instead to start reading the book of nature, written by the finger of God. What do you think you would have done seeing that happen? Let me know in the comments. The establishment was beyond horrified. This was heresy. They branded him the Luther of medicine, a radical extremist sent to tear down the very foundations of civilization and knowledge. His enemies, who had seethed at his arrogance and envied his success, now had the ammunition they needed. He was a heretic, a madman, a danger to the public. They began to close in. The final blow, when it came, was not a grand, philosophical debate. It was a petty argument over a medical fee. A prominent church official, whom Paracelsus had cured of a serious illness, refused to pay the agreed-upon price. Paracelsus, predictably, sued him. The court, filled with his academic enemies, sided with the official. An order was issued for his arrest. In the dead of night in 1528, less than a year after his triumphant appointment, Paracelsus was forced to flee the city of Basel like a common criminal. He was now a fugitive, an intellectual outcast, hunted by the very system he had so desperately tried to change. But this exile did not break him. It forged him. It burned away his desire for acceptance and left only the pure, unbreakable core of his revolutionary ideas. His war was no longer just with the doctors of Basel. It was with the entire history of human thought. So we have seen the evidence. A man who burned the foundations of medicine and replaced them with alchemy and poison. On the surface, it looks like the story of a brilliant but unstable madman. But that is not the real story. The real story lies not in what he did, but in the secret logic that drove him. A logic hidden in the very philosophy his enemies dismissed as nonsense. To truly understand what he did next, we have to look past the book burning. We have to look past the legendary arrogance and the battlefield cures. We have to finally answer the central question: why poison? What was the secret logic behind his madness? The answer he found was far more than a new medical technique. It was a completely new philosophy of the universe, a secret theory of reality, built upon 4 pillars that he believed would not just improve upon Galen's work, but would smash it into dust and replace it forever. The true danger of Paracelsus wasn't really about his chemistry. It was rooted in his philosophy. He argued that all of ancient medicine was built on sand because it failed to grasp the true nature of man and the cosmos. A true physician, he declared, must be a master of 4 pillars. The first was philosophy, the deep understanding of the 2 base elements, earth and water. The second was astronomy, the understanding of the 2 celestial elements, air and fire. The third, and most crucial, was alchemy, the sacred art of preparing and purifying the elements, of transforming them from their raw, chaotic state into their perfect, essential form. And the 4th pillar was virtue, the moral righteousness of the doctor himself. For without it, all other knowledge was poison. This 4-pillared worldview was held together by a single, breathtakingly mystical concept: the doctrine of signatures. It sounds like pure magic, doesn't it? Paracelsus passionately believed that God, in his infinite wisdom, had not left humanity to wander in darkness. He had left clues, or signatures, hidden in plain sight throughout all of creation, to show us the secret purpose of everything. A plant with a leaf shaped like a human liver could therefore be used to treat diseases of the liver. The brilliant yellow of the celandine flower, which resembled the color of jaundiced eyes, was a sign that it could cure jaundice. This was the true meaning of like cures like. But he took it one step further. He believed that the universe, the great macrocosm, was a single, living organism, and that man, the microcosm, was a perfect, miniature reflection of that universe. Everything that existed out there in the world also existed inside of us. Therefore, the poisons found deep within the earth, the arsenic, the mercury, the antimony, must have a corresponding effect on the poisons or diseases that grew inside of man. This strange mystical philosophy of cosmic sympathy led Paracelsus directly to his single most important and enduring contribution to science. This is the pivotal proof, the smoking gun. It is the idea that explains everything else, his simple, earth-shattering principle, sola dosis facit venenum. Only the dose makes the poison. This one sentence is the absolute foundation of two entire fields of modern science, toxicology and pharmacology. I'm genuinely curious for our viewers. Hearing this now, do you see this as a moment of profound scientific insight or the ultimate rationalization of a reckless man? Let us know your perspective in the comments. Paracelsus was the first to argue that there is no such thing as a poisonous substance, and there is no such thing as a safe substance. Every single thing in the universe, even water, even salt, even life-giving oxygen, is a deadly poison if the dose is too high. The reverse, he argued, must also be true. The most lethal substances known to man, the very minerals that caused such horrific diseases in the miners, could become the most powerful medicines if only the dose could be made small enough. This was the secret. This was the key that unlocked everything. This shows he wasn't a madman randomly giving people mercury. He was carefully using the sacred art of alchemy to purify these toxic metals, to break them down, to isolate their essential, healing spirit, what he called their arcana. He was attempting to administer these purified essences in precise, microscopic doses, waging a targeted chemical war on a specific illness inside the body. The poison wasn't the cure. The dose was the cure. And with that one idea, every piece of his life clicks into place. Suddenly, you see the hidden logic behind his rage. His violent rejection of the four humours came from more than just a rebellious spirit. It was a deep philosophical necessity. The theory of humours saw disease as a systemic imbalance. Paracelsus saw it as a specific, localized entity, an invader. You don't rebalance an invader. You attack it, and you kill it. The infamous book burning went beyond a simple display of ego. For him, it was a required act of demolition. He had to tear down the entire intellectual cathedral of Galen, because its philosophy of gentle harmony was preventing this new, aggressive chemical medicine from ever being born. His life of wandering was far more than tourism. You could call it a focused, decade-long research project. He was deliberately studying the forgotten corners of the world, the people who understood toxicology, chemistry, and the dark arts, because they held the secrets to his new arsenal of weapons. He was more than just a doctor. He was an alchemical weapons engineer. He was so dangerous because he fundamentally and forever changed the role of the physician. He replaced the idea of the doctor as a gentle gardener, tending to the body's natural harmony, with that of a battlefield commander. A commander who would diagnose the enemy, identify its weakness, and then launch a targeted chemical assault to destroy it. This philosophy created the very concept of a drug as we know it today, an external substance designed to create a specific, predictable chemical change inside the human body. It was the birth of modern pharmacology, born from the forbidden and mystical union of alchemy, magic, and medicine. This is his true and truly dangerous legacy. And this dangerous legacy, the idea that a poison could be perfected into a targeted, undetectable weapon, created a terrifying new kind of power. But while Paracelsus sought to turn poison into medicine to save lives, what happens when a brilliant mind applies the exact same principles of chemistry and precision, not for healing, but for murder? A century later in Italy, one woman would take this dark knowledge to its absolute limit, creating a poison so perfect it was called the slow transcending venom, and using it to orchestrate the deaths of over 600 men, becoming the most successful female serial killer in history. Her story reveals the terrifying other side of Paracelsus's discovery, and you can watch it by clicking the video on your screen right now.